USCHO.com.
Welcome to the USCHO Frozen Four live podcast for Saturday, live from Harpoon Harry's Crab House in Tampa, just a short walk from Amalie Arena. It's not just a restaurant, it's an adventure. Harpoon Harry's serving great seafood, sushi, and steak. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. Well, this week has gone by quickly, but there's a great game to be played this evening.
It's an adventure.
Yeah.
We've been saying that every day. Harpoon Harry's is an adventure. Well, it's an adventure outside. Because right now you've got the top two teams in the nation playing. You've got an unbelievable fan base in Minnesota that's probably going to put 15,000 people in there. And then Quinnipiac, the team that everybody's wouldn't be surprised if they won. So I'm really excited about this. You walked the streets earlier, and I know, Jimmy, in our tweet, you said I shouldn't be walking the streets. But that being said, like, you could feel the energy in this town right now. You could feel it at the pool. You could feel it everywhere. And, you know, I was down at the wharf and walking here and just even around the bar. You get everything Minnesota. Our first guest is in Minnesota stuff. I mean, this is the big day.
It really is. I mean, you play all year for this, and these two teams have each played, 40, almost 40 games. It comes down to one night, and there's so much excitement for the players, but that's the interesting thing about this tournament. There's no best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. This is one game, and what you do on the ice. I love Bob Motzko and what he said yesterday. He said it's whoever leaves the most mistakes in the dressing room is the team that probably comes out on top, and I kind of agree with that. But it should be a great game.
I just keep going back to experience, and when we talked about it yesterday, the off day. Just the experience of everything. Minnesota looked looser. They looked ready to go. They're learning off of how things went last year. The only thing that I thought that they were tight was them banning the media from watching practice.
Yeah.
So,
and as we found out today, Todd Molesky, our editor emeritus, found out that was a mistake and that they weren't supposed to be banning people. It was a misreading of it by the NCAA staff. So they should have allowed media in to watch the practices.
I wanted to watch drills. I wanted to watch his 14 minutes of whatever they were doing. In and out right now. As Frank Serratori says, the hay is in the barn.
Yeah. We're going to jump right into it here and our bringing the first guest. And he is dressed head to toe in Minnesota, and I don't blame him for that. But he is the CCHA commissioner, maybe one of the most veteran commissioners in the country. That's Don Lucia, former Minnesota coach. How excited are you to be not here in Tampa, to be here in Tampa watching the Gophers play?
I'm excited. I start to get goosebumps on days like this, and same on Thursday, because he had four of the, I felt, the top 5 teams in the country. You could argue Denver was a 1, but those 5 had seemed to separate themselves. The games were what we expected, both tied going in the third period, and Minnesota and Quinnipiac pulled away. But I expect the same type of game tonight. But, since I don't have Minnesota State here to cheer for like last year against Minnesota, so I got to go for maroon and gold on tonight, as much as my time there, but as much as my good friend Bob Motzko. I'm obviously rooting for him as a former assistant and a very close friend.
I wonder what you think back to these days. You went through a number of national title games. I mean, what were your memories of what Saturday was like, even Friday and Saturday? Because I know Jerry York used to call Friday at the Frozen Four the greatest practice of the year, because that meant you were playing for a national title. But did you remember back and harken back to like what it was like those 2 days?
Yeah, I do, and I go back to '96 in Cincinnati. I was fortunate enough to be a part of 4 national title games, and 2-2. And I always say I've experienced it all: 1 in overtime, lost in overtime, 1 going away in the third, and then kind of lost at the end by a couple goals against Union. I just remember waking up on game day, and just that game can't come quick enough, and especially now we're on Eastern time, so it's an 8 o'clock start. So just getting out, going for a walk, or back in the day when I ran a lot more, probably went for a run. Didn't mind. I think that started my little tradition in St. Paul. I saw that cathedral up on the hill, and I said, well, might be a good morning to walk up there and see if I can make sure the big guy's on our side as well. and followed that up in Buffalo and Philly. Didn't work quite as good in Philly, but you're just trying to occupy your day as much as anything else, and you want your players to play free, be free in the game, because you don't want them to play tight, because so much of it, that early surge, like Minnesota I thought came out on Thursday and really had a great surge. They weren't tight, because sometimes you can see that in a team. They feel that pressure and they make some mistakes early, but that didn't happen. Same thing with Quinnipiac. So it's just getting through that day and getting to the game, and let's get going. This is it. This is the final game. You learn those lessons from back in October. You're coaching all year long to get to this point.
That's all it took is to go to a cathedral. And when we played in 2014, how come I didn't know that?
Well, that was early. I'm talking about the Frozen Four. So
the first round you didn't
do that in the first
No,
round.
you know what? I will. I'll take that back. I did. Because I know the last one at 14, I know I went to, I think both times I went to, our regionals were on a Sunday, so I went to Sunday morning Mass right by the St. Paul Civic Center, because that's where we were staying. So I didn't make Mass.
I should have went to the morning Mass.
You should have. You know what? You should have, but that was Saturday. I went to the Sunday morning Mass.
You probably had a Palm Sunday in there, too.
He had a lot.
I wouldn't have had time for Palm Sunday. That's an hour and a half Mass.
He had a lot more confidence against the Colonials. He didn't need to go to Mass that year, but it also helps having Thomas Vanek.
Yeah, it helped to have his Thomas Vanek or Jordan Leopold and some of the great players that we had back in the day. And that's what, one of the things I'm going to mention is, and I know, Bob, when the field was set, I thought for sure BU and Minnesota would be the night game. And it is an advantage to play the early game. It is. There's a huge advantage.
Bob mentioned that the other day.
And I texted him right away. I said, Bob, I can't believe it that you're the early game. He right back. It's like, yeah, I'm so happy. Because here's where it makes a difference, in my opinion. You play that early game, you're out of there probably by 8:30 out of the rink. You're eating your meal by 9 o'clock. You've got a few hours to unwind. It's midnight. You're going to sleep. You play the late game. I know when we played North Dakota in 14, and it was such a 1 point, whatever seconds, it's your arch rival. It was difficult to come down off that. You're not leaving the rink till midnight. You're eating your post-game meal at 12:30 in the morning, probably not getting to sleep until 3-ish. I don't think I unwound till 4 in the morning. And that interrupts a little bit your prep for that Saturday and your practice and getting video and just getting your guys in that good routine. So I do think it's an advantage to play the early game on Thursday.
And one of the other things that people don't think of is if you're playing the late game, you got to go scout the early game, and you don't know who you're going to scout. If you play the early game, if you lose, you don't have to be at the rink the whole time. If you win, then you're there. But if both teams had to watch the early game and try to break down both assistants, and we always took it as one guy watches one team, one watches the other, and then they'll be in charge of that if you move on. And if you play the early game, you're in and out pretty quick if you lose.
Yes. But and the other thing that's a little bit different now with all of the technology, with the Instat and everything else to break down the game for you, most teams now with the technology available, you're going to have all your breakdowns from the regionals. So you're going to have your prep for, if you're Minnesota, I'm sure they didn't need it for Michigan because they already played them 5 times, but still you're going to have it ready to go. Same thing with Quinnipiac. So they're going to have all their prep and ready to go for the game on Saturday night before probably they even get here. They might look to see did anything really change, but really it's the nuance of the special teams more than anything else.
So I watched the championship game in your league, and obviously one of your statements, I will tell you this, of all the leagues, I was most impressed with how you did it. You got up and you spoke. You had everything there. You did a great job in the presentation of the trophy. Not to take anything away from the other commissioners, I thought that the atmosphere that you had after the championship, and the first thing you said is, we're used to crazy endings here in Mankato. What was your thoughts going through the whole championships and looking back on the last couple and all that?
Well, it's interesting to see. After Minnesota State won the regular season championship with that kind of quirky ending, no goal and all that, I texted Hasty on Sunday. I said, I'm never coming back to a championship game in Mankato again. He's going, well, what do you mean? What do we do? I said, no, but I mean, going back to last year and then this year, and then carrying on to our championship game this year, that you have a situation where you give up, unfortunately for Northern, the 2 pulled goalie situations. And you've been through it enough, Derek, that they got jump-started because a puck went off a foot and went in.
Yep.
And even the second went off a defender and then to the guy on the side. And that's many times how those goals are scored. But we've had 3 crazy endings in a row off those situations. So that's why I had to that's what came to mind right away. You're presented, well, can't have it without a crazy ending here.
But we talked about that one during the regular season when the final, the regular season title came down to that. So we remember that.
But that's the thing. So like you got up, you got the microphone out, you had the whole crowd in the palm of your hand, and you did it very well, like an NHL, and it was impressive to see. And the crowd was going crazy. I don't know how they would have been if it would have went against them. Yeah. But it was a great atmosphere.
And we tried to actually pattern it a little bit when we put the league together, with the table and the cloth and we try to pattern, quite frankly, after how the NHL does the Stanley Cup and even the regular season. We had the white gloves and carrying out, and we made it known that in the regular season, whether it's on the road or at home, we're presenting the trophy in front of the fans, not tucked away in a locker room because you didn't win it on your home ice. Because I just think it's important that it's a difficult trophy. It's a magnificent McNaughton Cup. We want to make sure that gets presented in front of the people so they can see it.
I hope you never get into a Hockey East situation where you have 4 schools that can win it on the final. Poor Steve Metcalf a year ago had that. And
at least they're all near enough by that
they were close enough.
That would be a little harder. You'd have to have a helicopter ready.
You'd have to pick. And in that situation, we haven't had it yet, but I'm sure we'll have a situation where it could be one of 2 places, and you just have to choose one. And if it's not that one, then you'll have to present it at a different time.
We were talking about Mankato, and Mike Hastings getting that great opportunity now to go to Wisconsin, certainly being rewarded for all his hard work and success there, but also a really nice coaching job that's opened up there in your league.
It really has. It's a great job, and that's a credit to not only Mike and Todd and their staff, but to me, more important than that, it's a credit to their athletic director, Kevin Beisman, their president, President Inch, who's a huge supporter, and the previous president. Really, they put in the resources of their hockey program, and they've made Minnesota State a perennial NCAA team. As we all know, they came so close to winning the national title last year, and if they could have scored 1 more goal in the second, been up by 2, in my opinion, they would have won that game. But they've really built something nice. Their attendance is terrific, so they have the great fan support, and I'm not sure the next guy's going to come in with 8 out of 9 titles, but I think there's no doubt that Minnesota State can be a perennial top 2 or 3 team in the CCHA and regularly going to the NCAA tournament.
It's going to be hard. What's the old saying? You don't want to follow Roger Maris in center field,
or John Wooden at UCLA. Took a few times, but I think they're understanding. I mean, they took a major hit losing Mike. They also took a hit when 3 key underclassmen turned pro along with their seniors. Now I understand 4 kids are in the portal. So they're going to have to rebuild a little bit. But the good thing is I don't think it'll take long. I think they can get back to where they are right now within a couple of years. And again, that's the support that they have in the community and the administration.
Tell us where your league, and obviously it's still kind of in its infancy. Yep. Tell us your, a view from the top down where you think the CCHA is.
Well, I think we're in a good spot. When I came on board, we had 7 teams, so the big mandate was to try to get to 8. And then when St. Thomas was maybe going to have to be forced to move on to Division I, I was right in Phil's ear right away, and, hey, we got a spot for you and the location. And so they've been a great fit. They made the announcement with the $75 million donation, the new facility be coming on board. And the same with Augustana. Did we have to expand beyond 8? No. But I thought it was the right thing to do. They were within our footprint. They're making a major commitment to their college hockey program. And as we all know, there's teams that have elevated, but they really haven't made any commitment. So when you're going to build a $50 million plus facility, you're making a major commitment. You're not sticking your toe in the water. You're diving in, and so that's why for me they've been successful in their other sports at the Division II level, won national titles. They are committed. Sioux Falls is a great community, and I think they'll do an outstanding job. They hired a terrific young coach, and Garrett's not coaching for Minnesota right now, but his fingerprints are all over that Minnesota team with recruiting and what he's able to do the previous few years. So we're in a good spot. We're going to be very competitive. We felt that going in, and we were a lot more competitive in year 2 with each other, than year 1. And I think that compression is going to continue. And I think we have a group where I don't necessarily think you're going to see the top teams always at the top or the middle or the bottom. I think there's going to be that elevator that goes up and down with a lot of different programs. And I think that's what I've been impressed with, that nobody's waving the white flag. You've heard a lot the last month about the Big Ten and the NIL and the All-Stat money and the portal. But I can guarantee nobody's waving the white flag. They're going to continue to do everything they can to be successful.
Do you think and obviously you got from one end of the Midwest to the other end of the Midwest, and this is something that hasn't been brought up because everybody's scared to death right now, the Big Ten. You think expansion's done? You think reorganization's done?
No, I would not say it's never going to happen. I think in a few years, could there be some reorganization? Yeah, I think that's safe to say. You've got some teams. Number one, Arizona State, where are they going to end up? I think it's pretty safe to say, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, that they're looking at sooner rather than later to get into a conference. They don't like a situation where you can't get into the NCAA tournament. In the last 6 weeks, your season becomes difficult to coach your players. When you have a tournament, you always have that access and that carrot with your guys to play yourself in. So I think that's a big one. Where's Lindenwood going to be in a few years? They've made the commitment to go Division I. What they didn't have hardly. I think what do they have, 2 or 4 home games this year?
Right.
4.
So next year if they have 16 home games, how's their attendance going to be? How is that support going to continue? So, with those teams, that could lead to some reconfiguration. Big Ten obviously sits at 7. They'd like to get at 8. Where's that 8th team going to come from? Is it going to come from within the Big Ten? Is it going to come from outside the Big Ten? Who knows? Would the Big Ten say, hey, we're making a lot of money and here's some seed money to a Big Ten school to help you get going with another hockey program? All that is unknown, but I think there's a chance 3 to 5 years from now that there could be some reshuffling of the deck. The Big Ten is not going to go away. I don't think that's ever going to happen. They're drawing well within the Big Ten network, which is important, and that's okay. Like-minded schools. That's the beauty of the Big Ten, and that's the beauty of the CCHA, that you play like-minded institutions.
That's kind of a little of the conversation we had a couple days ago with Mike Snee, that we're asking about that, and he said, there's always going to be a place for every school that wants to play Division I hockey to be able to play with other teams and be competitive within their group. So it's good to hear that philosophy. Yeah,
it's not about, does every one of our teams have the same resources of the Big Ten? No, but let's face it, what Division I teams do? The Big Ten has a $150 million budget, obviously not just for hockey, but when you look at the other end of it, the recruiting budgets at our schools, I bet, are just very similar to what the recruiting budgets are at the Big Ten level. None of our programs lack for the equipment. They're paying the coaches, the recruiting budgets, how they travel. Yeah, are they in a charter every weekend? No, but who is?
Charter bus.
Yeah, it's a charter bus. That's right. That's right. So, we're not going to have that, but that's okay. And you don't need that to be successful. You have to find, every program has to have their niche, their recruiting niche, their philosophy, recruit the right type of player that's going to come in and be a part of the culture of not only their program, but their location of where their university is.
Last question. Who wins?
Oh, boy.
I'm going to ask everybody that one to edit up.
I still think I think Minnesota's going to win. I think it's their year. They're good defensively, more than they get credit for. I think Justin Close has quietly established himself as a very good goaltender. I see Minnesota, if they can get a lead, do a good job defending it. So I'm predicting a 1-goal game, and then it finishes with an open net goal for Minnesota.
4-2. I feel that.
That's the score.
Give me the number 4-2. I could see it.
Really? You just threw it out?
I just gave him his
Oh,
number.
I thought you were throwing out your number.
No, that was the number, because you're not going to. I don't think they're going to score 4 or 5 goals. I think they can get to 3 and get to 4th, and I think if they can get a power play goal, and it doesn't have to be that Cooley line scoring. Minnesota's got pretty good depth throughout the lineup. With that said, I think the difficult part about playing Quinnipiac, they do play that 1-1-3. And when you haven't seen it a lot, you have to be willing to put pucks behind them to have success, because if you don't put pucks behind them, you turn that puck over at the offensive blue line to the top of the circle, they're a good job of countering. So to me, a real early look into the game is Minnesota consistently willing to put pucks behind them and get up and on a forecheck versus trying to make plays at the offensive blue line
because
and turning it over.
Michigan did not do that
Correct.
on Thursday night.
You've been listening to the show.
No, I have not, but I've just...
We've talked a lot about that.
Yeah, and
I was getting mad. I was like, dump the puck.
Yeah, that's just not their MO.
I know.
I watched them in the Allentown Regional, and, as talented as Michigan was, they're not afraid to give up.
Yep, they traded
on-man
chances
rushes
all game.
Yep.
Well, Don Lucia, we really appreciate all the time you always give us each year. It's a big night for you. I know the CCHA might not be here, but I know the Gophers are near and dear to your heart. So enjoy the night. And we don't root here, but I hope you have a good outcome.
Well,
because it's
you know
nice.
what? I want to see a great game. Most important thing,
Right.
I want to see a great game. Wouldn't bother me if it went into overtime to a degree, as long as Minnesota won, but just that excitement and the sudden win. But it'll be a great game, and we appreciate all you guys do for college hockey, whether it's your podcast, the support that you give us. I think it's really important for college hockey to have USCHO behind us.
Well, we appreciate that very much.
And we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with Dave Fischer on USCHO Frozen Four Live.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Nick Bukestad.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
David Backus. And Zach Parisi were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
Welcome back to USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa at Harpoon Harry's Crab House. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley, and let's bring in our next guest.
Yeah, he is the Senior Director of Communications for USA Hockey, and just one of the best guys you get to know in the game of hockey, Dave Fischer. He said he has been at, I don't know how many Frozen Fours now that you've done, but you moderate the media. You're pretty much our go-to contact, but have a big role at a very big organization, USA Hockey. First off, welcome in, but just thoughts on the city. We've had a pretty fun time here in Tampa, haven't we?
We have. I have. This is my 31st Frozen Four, but ironically, the two that have been in Tampa before, I have not been able to do because we've had conflicting World Championship events at USA Hockey. So, my first time hearing what all the high praises were about, I heard from people that were here in 12 and 16, and it's amazing the job they do. I mean, they've got one of the best sports commissions in our country without question. There's a lot of little things that you don't see, that people don't see, that they do for teams and the NCAA staff and others, which are cool. But just the grandiose of the signage that you see around town, that it's like, wow, this is a big event, the Frozen Fest that they have going outside the arena. When you arrived at the airport, again, more signage that you saw, and just their excitement about hockey and all the things. That's translated, obviously, into two sellout crowds here for tonight and then the Thursday semifinal. So it's been fabulous.
I want to jump into USA Hockey and the success of American players at the college level. We have seen, obviously, a great growth in American hockey besides the college level, but then you see the translation from the college game to the NHL game and how many Americans are moving in. And I don't, you probably know the numbers much better than I do, but it's pretty significant. And this game that we don't have to go back that far. When all three of us probably started in college hockey, the percentage of Americans playing in the NHL was probably in the single digits. And now it's significantly different. Yeah,
it's Americans alone. It's about up to, I think, 28% this year. Was an all-time high last year. And obviously the colleges and universities, schools knows, obviously. He was coaches and knows directly the impact you make in kids' lives. And kids want to go on to play in the National Hockey League, many of them that play Division I, obviously. But a college degree is a good backup plan, and a really good one. And even if you do go on to play in the National Hockey League, certainly that education and the experience on a campus is great. And it's great to see not only, and then we've had some great success in some of the World Juniors too. 2017 comes to mind in terms of the Troy Terry antics. And of course, TJ Sochi in the Sochi games, when the shootout, when he kept going again and again and again and again, scoring, we wound up beating Russia in a preliminary round game in their barn. That was fun too. So there's a ton, but those are some of the top ones. And then on the college hockey ranks, still the Boston University Northern Michigan National Championship game, 8-7 in triple overtime. I've seen a lot of great games. That still ranks at the top of my list.
Let's talk a little bit about USA Hockey and how it has evolved over the years. And this is not yesterday that this has changed, but it feels like the development of young players. And I have a 10-year-old, and Derek has kids that are in USA Hockey programs throughout the country. It just feels that youth hockey, the development at the early ages and seeding the young players to bring them up through the game throughout their entire lives, it's changed and it's really improved to a massive level, and that probably has a lot to do with the success that the American game has had.
Yeah, it all contributes. What's done at the grassroots level is highly impactful, and I hearken back to probably 2009, I think, when, or really before that, 2007, 08, when we were looking at the numbers of youth players, and they were diminishing, and spent a lot of time going, what's going on here? Why are we losing players? And, the fun element was one of the top reasons, time commitment and cost. And so what could we do to impact? And we spent a lot of time just on the environment for kids and put together a plan. And so what an 8-year-old learns is not the same as what a 10-year-old should be taught, and a 12 and 14. We call it the American Development Model. It's essentially youth hockey. And, as hockey has grown to all 50 states, and gotten bigger. I mean, it takes a lot of people. There's a lot of people that, they just volunteer their parents. So we're helping, and that's not that long ago. The churn is still happening, but it's having an impact, reducing the ice size for young kids. That was still sitting there kind of controversial, but we've gotten past that mostly. But kids get more puck touches early on. The game is more fun. It's just not little Johnny or Susie going up and down the ice, one person and you chasing them.
I enjoyed mite hockey a lot more with the half ice as opposed to the full size ice, because I imagine 6-year-olds trying to get from one end to the other. It took almost the whole period.
Yeah.
So.
And other sports have followed kind of some of the things that our group, our volunteers and our staff have led, and that we can feel proud as a sport on that. And there's a long way to go. Parent behavior still sits there.
Yeah,
we got to work on that. How we're treating officials.
I'm going to ask about that one, because I've seen the marketing campaigns that USA Hockey has done, and I think that they are great. But it still is an issue that officials are leaving our game, and we see the referees and we talk to them here at the Frozen Four. These are people that have been doing it for years, and they're fantastic officials, obviously, to be here at the national championship level. But it's an issue that officials leave this game. It's probably more of an issue than players leaving the game at this point for USA Hockey.
Well, and it's youth sports in general,
yeah.
Overall on the officiating side. And we talk to our counterparts at other governing bodies. It does make me smile this year, and I don't know what to exactly attribute it to, but we had the second most officials ever at USA Hockey this year. So 28,000 plus. So that's a real positive. That said, the task force that our president Mike Trimboli put together, their work is really just, and some of their recommendations are really just getting going. But one thing that anybody listening can participate in is let's hold each other accountable, right? And you're sitting in the stands and somebody's chirping at the officials or whatnot, just say, hey, calm down. We need officials, and we can help hold each other accountable. That's easy to say. I know, sitting here and you're sitting in the stands, not that easy to do probably, but it's something we can all do and have an immediate impact.
So with that, obviously I've got 3 that play hockey, and you see it. What do you think moving forward, besides officiating, is the next big thing for USA Hockey to, per se, fix?
That's
coming with hard stuff.
Schools had the question today.
Don't think you're coming in for softballs, man.
Yeah, and I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to turn it back to you to answer that too, because
come on.
Well, no, because you're right involved. I'd be curious to hear your opinion because you got kids involved, but I think I wouldn't describe it necessarily what I'm about to say as a problem. I would consider it more a challenge as the demographics of our country change, and making sure we continue the churn to have welcoming communities where everybody feels welcome. And I think we're always working on that. I mean, as long as I've been at USA Hockey, we want everyone to play. I think you guys all do too. We want fans, whatever. But I think some of the demographics have changed in different parts of the country, and I think we've done a decent job collectively. But I think that's something that will be within the next decade that will continue to be a priority and something we'll be working on.
If you're asking me, cost,
yeah.
I had 2 that played in the national championships last week.
Yes.
And it probably cost more than a summer vacation.
Yeah.
Everybody had to fly. Every team had to fly to San Jose in the U18s. Almost everybody had to fly to Dallas in the girls.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's got to be some sort of, and to buy it at a 2-week advance notice and things like that. I think when you're getting in, and not just talking tier 1, boys, girls, whatever, you got tier 2, you got high school. I think there's got to be some way to make everything a little bit cost efficient in not just going to national championships, but in hockey in general.
Yeah, and
I need a part-time job. This is cutting it.
It's a challenge. And I'm sure we've all heard it as long as we've been in the sport. The cost of it, and various factions, the equipment, travel, whatever it might be, and downsizing the ice and putting more kids on the ice. When we started the ADM, that was again what controlling the cost of the equipment. Where we put tournaments, and that's been talked about schools too on these national championships, and you want to share it with different parts of the country, but or you just go right down the middle so it's equitable for everybody. The Northeast has such a big population base, but teams come from all. I don't know where this.
I don't know the answer either, but I spent 5 days in San Jose.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Every team minus maybe the junior Ducks had to fly there.
Yeah.
And and same thing to go to Dallas for the girls. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is because I was fortunate with the girls the year before to be in Pittsburgh. So
right.
I guess that they came back and showed me.
And now you have a part-time job here.
There you go.
They don't pay me enough, trust me.
So it's over 8 months away, but preparation already getting ready for the World Juniors, picking David Carl as the head coach, a great young coach. What kind of stuff goes on now and through the summer to get ready for that? Not just on the ice, but maybe also in your part of the business too.
Yeah, there's a lot, and that's a great tournament. We're excited, by the way. We're hosting that again in the U.S. coming up here in December of 25, January 26. It's a 2026 World Juniors officially and the 50th anniversary of the tournament, so that's cool. But, there's all kinds of conversations that have already been had, filling out the staff as a priority, and we should have that done here very, very shortly. The evaluation of players. We will have a camp in Plymouth, Michigan at USCHO Hockey Arena. I think July 26th through August 6th will be the dates. We haven't totally settled on that. Finland and Sweden are coming over. And so we'll play games against their candidates for their junior teams at USCHO Hockey Arena. And that we're back to that. We did that kind of stuff pre-COVID and haven't done it since. So it's kind of a return to what we had been calling the World Junior Summer Showcase. So there's that. And it's just conversations and watching players constantly, and we're gonna have a good group. We're gonna have a good team again. We always do, but I'm not the talent evaluation expert, but in talking and listening to conversations, it's going to be exciting for American hockey. It sounds like.
Great. Look forward to that every year for sure.
Well, Fish, we always enjoy you stopping by. I'm glad that we were able to make it work yet again. I feel like this Saturday slot is almost the Dave Fischer slot. Every year, the first major slot, 3:50 on Saturday, usually seems to be Dave Fischer's place. So we're glad to have you back.
It's good to be here, and I also just want to remind or give listeners a little taste. We're going to host the Women's World Championship, which is going on right now in Brampton. We'll host that next year at this time. We should be announcing the location of that, I would again expect here in the next couple weeks.
So sadly, you will be missing from St. Paul.
I don't know yet. Depends what the dates are. I know. It's in the back of my mind, but we'll see. But appreciate all you guys doing the promotion and conversation about the sport. It's awesome.
Well, we appreciate USA Hockey, everything they do to help this sport exist really across this country.
And we're going to take a break, and we'll be joined by ECAC Commissioner Steve Hagwell when we return.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Johnny Gaudreau.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
Joe Pavelski. And Shane Gostisbehere were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
We're back with USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley, and our pantheon of guests continues here.
All-Star Guest Day.
It is.
This really is. When you really think about who you could have for guests, it's a lot of fun. And we mentioned on Thursday 2 commissioners retiring. I guess it was actually Wednesday that we had Bob DiGregorio on.
Been that long? Holy cow.
That was Wednesday. Yeah, I know. It's been a long week here. But now we have Steve Hagwell from the ECAC. Your final Frozen Four. You have a team in the fight tonight. That probably feels great. But first off, congratulations on just a fantastic career.
Thank you.
And what you've done for this league and brought college hockey forward. But how does it feel to know that you're kind of at the end? I'm sure there's some bittersweet moments here this weekend.
Yeah, I got that question a lot, and in all honesty, I haven't thought that far ahead. I mean, we're here, and I'm doing the things I need to do, and going to Naples, right, and get ready for Naples at the end of the month. And I think coming out of Naples, it'll probably hit me, because May and June, and then it'll be over. And I really haven't thought that far ahead. I will say this. I love the league that I work for, the people, the administrators, coaches, staff. They've treated me better than I deserve, frankly. Love the league. Not leaving because I don't, there's anything negative. It's just time for me. Yeah.
Well, it has been a great career. Have you had a chance, and I know you say you're still kind of in the moment, but have you had a chance to kind of reflect back on some of the accomplishments that this league has made, and maybe even just college hockey in general? I think of you as one of the great unifiers in this game in terms of bringing leagues, bringing commissioners together. It has changed over the last 25 plus years.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. We had dinner last night with a group of about 30, and I was just talking. When I first joined and became a commissioner, and I sat in a meeting room, and there's Tommy Anastas and played, Bob DiGregorio played, Joe Britannia played, Bruce McLeod, same thing, the late R.H. Bob Peters, and I'm sitting here going to myself, what the heck am I doing here? I mean, and you know what? From the moment I joined that group, they made me feel like I was part of it and with them and on the same level with them. And it was never, all right, he didn't play, so you got to earn your stripes. They welcomed me, and I'll never forget that. And I appreciate the unifier comment because it's all about people and just bringing them in and welcoming them and making them feel part of it. Because you take the people out of the game, what am I doing in my job? Just pushing paper, right? So, no, and I don't mean that flippantly. It's always been about the people.
So, as you approached your last couple putts on 18, using a Masters reference today.
If you knew my golf game, you wouldn't use that reference. But go ahead.
I said a couple.
It might not be a couple.
I said couple putts.
Okay, yeah, from close range.
Yeah. As you do there, what would be one of your proudest moments as there? Obviously, we've been on committees together. 20 years we've done things. Rules Committee Championship. I've seen you. I've watched you from afar of what you do. What would be? And I know it can't be probably one, but what are 2 or 3 of the prouder moments you have?
I don't. That's a great question, Derek. Again, I don't want to avoid the question. It's never been about me, from my perspective.
Well, you sent me that in a text when I congratulate you.
Yeah,
you did. You said it's never been about me.
Yeah, it's not. It's this league, and the thing I guess most proud of is when I started, this break happened in the mid '80s with Hockey East, and when the landscape changed again, and our league stayed together, and they've been together since Vermont left, and then Quinnipiac coming in, and the camaraderie from my perspective of the people within the league. Are they competitive? Yes. Do they want to beat the heck out of each other? Yes, I get all that, but it's always been a unified league position. I mean, our votes aren't always 12-0, don't get me wrong. I would say that getting back to Lake Placid, we kind of stumbled our way a little bit, and I certainly had a lot to do with that, because when I started, we were in Lake Placid, and Albany was hosting regionals, and it was like, wow, we could do this, and it'd be great, and it's centrally located, and people coming in and out, and it unfortunately didn't work. It did for 8 years. It was good up and down. And then, but getting back to Lake Placid, which I've said many times on interviews, it's a magical place. That may sound corny to people who have never been there. It is. It's so special, and I hope this league that I currently represent is there forever and never leaves.
The 4 teams that were in Lake Placid this year all made the NCAA tournament. Yep. And that's actually, to have those 4 teams in is pretty remarkable when you think about how during the COVID year no conference was affected anywhere near as hard as you were with the Ivies and Union and RPI not playing that season. What's it been like working with the teams and seeing how all these programs have not only gotten back playing, but gotten back playing at a very good level?
Yeah. It's a great testament to the coaches and athletic directors and the programs in our league. I mean, we had 4 on the women's side get in. We have 4 on the men's side. I mean, the most on each side of the gender. And that's tremendous. And, yeah, it's is there still a lot of work to be done and obstacles to be overcome? Because the ripple effect, especially for the Ivies or the teams that didn't play, is going to continue on for a little while longer. So it's just a great testament to the people in this league and the the institutions that they represent to come back, like you said, and advance to the NCAA tournament.
And a great moment for Colgate's Don Vaughn to win the league.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't root, I'm neutral and so on, but there are special moments like that, and for Vonner to win the title was tremendously awesome, and obviously it was in our league, so we had a winner and a loser, but it was great for him personally, and I was very happy for him.
Taking a look at everything from a commissioner and the rest of college hockey, where do you feel things need to be changed? What do you think the issues are moving forward? How does college hockey continue to grow? And I know there's a lot of whispers about issues. What do you feel?
Well, I don't know. I'm still sitting here. This isn't the NCAA that I grew up in. I mean, it's so different now, and I mean, the portal obviously has its, everybody's seeing the impact right now, but as we move forward, how is that going to continue to play out? Is it going to widen the gap? The NIL thing, all the different issues that are out there. I don't know. I hope, the NCAA, one thing that is positive from my perspective is it sounds like they're going to be forming sport committees. Like football and basketball have always had their football issues committee and basketball issues where people in the sport can decide what they want to do in the direction they want to go with certain topics, whatever they may be, championship site, rules, and so on. And it sounds like hockey's going to have that available to it. And a combined men's and women's, and I think it is. The sport is a sport. I mean, it has differences, and people within that group can have, you address the issue separately. But I think that'll be a big plus if that moves forward. This event, I hope it's great. I love Tampa. Okay, personally, I'd come here every year, just for the record. But there are other places, and it continues to grow, and I think it's in a good spot right now, and just need to maintain it and keep building it.
Is there a need, and I feel like I've asked you this almost every year that we've had you on the show, but is there a need for more representation within the NCAA? We have 5 single sport conferences here in hockey.
Yep.
Is there a need to get, maybe you don't call it a different name, maybe you can say I'm Hockey East or Atlantic Hockey or whatever, but is there a need for more seats at the table? Because that does seem to be always an issue for college hockey.
Yes, and the answer is yes, but if these committees, the sport committees are created, if you will, to oversee the sport, and now that might be a remedy for what you're asking, because right now 34 Division I conferences, I don't know if my number's right, it might be 34, 35, and we get a lot of these legislative issues, and you look at who's on the roster, and it's like, well, there's one who has a hockey program, and we need to solicit their input and support. And so I hope in this new structure that's still, to me, just working its way through, that the Hockey Issues Committee can address those various topics. And from a legislative standpoint, it may still be the need to go to the, council or whatever and solicit, and they may not have hockey people, and so that might be something that still needs to be worked through.
What's the process right now for finding a replacement? What's the timeline, all that kind of stuff?
They posted it formally. They're going with Parker Search Firm, and I think it got posted last Monday. I might be off a little bit.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
We go Monday. Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that interviews will be held. I'm not part of the process, and that's not because in a negative in any way. It's I'm the outgoing guy. So if my administrators and coaches come to me and say, hey, can you give us, we'd like your help with X, Y, and Z, I'll be happy to do that. And if they don't, I'm not sitting here going, how come I'm not part of the process? Because, again, I'm the outgoing guy.
With your retirement and with Bob DiGregorio's, all of a sudden we find Steve Metcalf and then by about 2 or 3 weeks, Don Lucia as the senior guys after you think about some of the people who had been around for a long time. Does that bring up some challenges, or does it also maybe bring up some opportunities?
Yeah, I think opportunities, and it's a great group, and they're very knowledgeable, and they've got experience, and Joe's around, still around, doing different things, and I, what I, just to deviate a little bit, what I told my administrators and coaches is, look, I'm going to be around. You call me a million times. When I started, I called Joe Britannia a million times. I'm not lying. My head was spinning. I mean, I had never been a commissioner. I had never done a budget, didn't do a schedule. Coaches' meetings I ran with the NCAA and so on, but I called him constantly, and he always picked up the phone and gave me advice, and I'm looking to do the same thing. So if Steve Metcalf wants to call me in November and says, hey, can you remember this or whatever, because I keep my emails from 15 years ago, and I'll help him out any way I can, because the one thing I want to make sure of for the league that I currently represent and for college hockey is I want to help the process. I don't want to say, see ya, and you're on your own and go away. If I can answer the phone 1,000 times, I may get tired after a little while, but I'll do that.
What is next? Is there
it's an open slate.
Golf? Okay.
My bride is a very good golfer.
I've heard that.
She's good. She wants to play, so I've got to get my shoulders squared away and learn how to play better. Yeah. So we'll do that. It's an open slate, and I've told people when I made the calls telling them of my decision that I can't state how blessed I and my family have been with this, being in this community, college hockey community, and I have a very strong desire to give back. And now, what does that look like? I don't know. I want to help people. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I have a very strong desire to help people.
I know Derek has one closing question. I'll leave that for him, but I want to touch on women's hockey and how much it grew while you were at the ECAC. And your league, obviously, a couple of national championships in there. What have you seen in that, and how positive do you think it is going forward?
It's grown tremendously, and the level of competition has increased with each passing year. And I remember when, early on in my tenure, I mean, teams were just adding. Clarkson added like in 2003, 4, and then Union and Colgate, and there was a huge gap. There was a big gap.
It was Harvard and everybody.
Oh my God, and Dartmouth at the time, and Cornell and came along, and then it went a little bit of a cycle. But now, I mean, just the women's game in general, and specifically for our league. Our league is like, it's dynamite. And again, it's we as league staff, our job is to help the programs where we can. But you look at Yale and Colgate and Quinnipiac this year, et cetera, and Clarkson, and they're putting the resources in. They got great coaches. They're getting great student athletes, and it's a testament to them. And from a league standpoint, we get to tout that and promote it to everybody else, and it's been great.
I have a two-part question to finish it up. You ever see a day, because your league has had such success in women's hockey, where this could become a combined Frozen Four, men and women?
Do I ever see a day? I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I don't know. With the calendar being different right now, they'd have to shift it.
Yeah.
And so could that happen? The World Championships on the women's side, when it first changed, when the NCAA first came in with their championship, they wanted to stay away from the World Championships because, on a Frozen Four weekend, I think I remember Dartmouth players who, Team Canada said, you got to come or you'll never be able to represent your country again. That's when it was a little more not so nice, and they would leave on the Frozen Four or the day after or the day before, and but it could happen, yeah.
I mean, I just think of this whole, if you want to, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know if there's enough.
I'd love to see it.
I mean, you look at the growth of the women's Frozen Four, or women's Final Four in basketball, and you look at the growth of women's hockey. I mean, it could be a home run. I just because your league has been so good with all the teams, and everything. And so that was the first part. And I've asked this question to a lot of people on Thursday. I asked it to Don today. Prediction.
My prediction?
Yeah.
Quinnipiac.
Of course, we knew that.
Yeah.
Score.
Oh, no, I don't get into scores. As long as they're up at the end of the game, then it's good. I like one-sided games when it's on my side of the ledger.
That's
so,
right. 9-2 is
I'm not
fine by
rooting
you.
for a close game. You're exactly right. I'll take 9-2.
You really didn't help us there.
Well, Steve Hagwell, congratulations on a
Thank you.
wonderful career as commissioner. We hope to see you staying around college hockey. We'll hopefully see your face going forward. But thank you for everything you've done for us, the number of times you've been available, answered questions, answered phone calls late at night. I know we appreciate all that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My
pleasure.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Red Berenson here on USCHO Frozen Four Live.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Johnny Gaudreau,
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
Joe Pavelski, and Shane Gostisbehere were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
Welcome back to USCHO Frozen Four Live from Tampa. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. Jim, why don't you do the honors?
Well, an absolute legend gets to join us, and we had him in Boston last year. It's great to have him back on the show. The longtime legendary coach at Michigan now works for the Big Ten as a special assistant to the commissioner. Is that how you call it?
I think I'm the senior advisor.
Senior advisor. That's a good one.
To Kevin Warren.
But the great Red Berenson. Red, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Tampa. It's been a great week for obviously the Big Ten. I know Michigan didn't get to where you probably wanted them to. I'm sure there's some cheering interest. We had Donnie Lucia on earlier, and he had definitely Minnesota garb all over him. So I know there's some rooting interest, but still a great weekend for the Big Ten.
Yeah, it really was, and I think it started in the regionals when the regionals started, and some of the scores that showed up that nobody ever expected, like for Colgate to give up that many goals, and Michigan Tech to give up that many goals to Big Ten schools, and maybe the Minnesota Canisius game was expected, but it was pretty impressive, and Ohio State had a great team this year as well. So I thought, and Penn State gave Michigan everything they could in their second game. So I thought the Big Ten from top to bottom was better than it's been in years. So it's showing up now. You had two Big Ten schools in the Frozen Four. Some of us were hoping they'd be in the championship game, but Quinnipiac had something to say about that, and they were the better team, and they'll be playing tonight. So I think it's a indication of how far college hockey's come since. I mean, I played in a so-called Frozen Four. I think it was in Utica in 1962, And I can't remember how many people were there, but there weren't very many. And it wasn't like, it's just a different world now. But this is good stuff. We're glad to be here.
So growing up in St. Louis, obviously I watched you play. I played against you as a player when you were coaching, and then I coached against you. So obviously I've seen a lot of my whole life basically having something to do with, your hockey career. Take us to probably some of your proudest achievements as a player, coach. If you look back in hockey, in your life in hockey, what would be some of the top moments that you had?
Well, I've been pretty lucky. I remember when I played junior hockey in Canada, and I got to play 2 years ahead of my age group. So I was playing with 18 and 20-year-olds when I was 16 and 17. So I think that helped develop me quicker, and so when it came time to decide whether to turn pro, like Montreal offered us a scholarship. They owned our rights. This is before the draft. And they offered us a pro contract, and they offered me $100 to just sign the contract. And I called my dad long distance, and that was a big thing too. There were no cell phones or anything. I went to a pay phone. I had to call him long distance, collect, and he's on the other end saying, "Who's calling?" And I said, "It's me, Gord." And he said, "Are you in trouble? Is something wrong?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Montreal wants me to sign a pro hockey contract, and they're going to give me $100 just to sign my name. And I'm suspicious of that. Like, I think it's..." He said, "Well, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And we'll have time to talk about it." So anyway, that kept me eligible so I could go to U.S. college. And the next year I did. And I still had 2 years of junior eligibility left. So that was a big thing. A lot of the people in Western Canada were upset about that and so on. And so there were 5 of us that left the Regina Pats and went down to Michigan. And in the meantime, there were a few players leaving, then for Duluth and for Denver and North Dakota. And so the wheel was turning out in Western Canada for players to go to college. And so going to Michigan turned out to be a great thing. So you couldn't play your first year. And then another break, I think, that came my way was the fact that the Belleville McFarlands had won the Allen Cup as a senior hockey championship. And so they were entitled to represent Canada in the World Tournament because there were no pros allowed then. And so I got a call from the Belleville McFarlands right after our final exams my freshman year, at our midterm final exams, and at Christmas, and they wanted me to go with the Belleville McFarlands to Europe, and they were going to play all over Europe for about 2 months and then end up in Czechoslovakia and play in the World Tournament. So here I was, now an 18-year-old kid, and and so I jumped at it. I talked to our coach at Michigan, Al Renfrew, and our athletic director, Fritz Chrysler, and they agreed. Now, they knew I'd probably never come back to Michigan. I'd probably be gone when I went to this World Championship. But everything worked out well. I went, I played for Belleville. I had a great experience. We won the championship. We beat the Russians and the Czechs and the Swedes, and we had a great tour of all these countries that we played in, Germany, Czechoslovakia. I mean, it was a world education for me at 18. So anyway, I came back and I told Renfrew I'm coming back to Michigan, no matter what. Montreal tried to sign me again. And so anyway, I knew what I should do. I wanted to have something to fall back on. When you're from Western Canada and you grew up with Depression parents, you always want to be conservative and you don't want to take any chances. And I thought I would be a hockey player, but I wanted to have something to fall back on. And so I did. I ended up going to Michigan, and it was the best thing I did. So as far as hockey moments, there were games, you have good games. Like a lot of people will point to my 6-goal game when I played for St. Louis in Philadelphia, and other people will point to the fact we won the Stanley Cup in 1965 with Montreal. And I played on a checking line with Henry Richard and Claude Provost, and we played against Bobby Hull's line, like just about every shift in a 7-game series, and we won in 7 games. But my proudest moment, when you piece all this together, besides my personal life, my family and my kids and my grandkids now, my proudest moment was the day after we won the Stanley Cup, and we had the parade in Montreal, and then Joy, my wife, and we had 2 kids then, drove to Ann Arbor, and I was already enrolled in the MBA, the Michigan Business School, to get my MBA, and I started class the next day, and I was sitting in class, and I thought, this is great, because I'm going to look after life after hockey, and I'm doing the right thing. And I was, of course, nobody knew me from Adam, and except the teacher, and he was a Nova Scotian who had just got his PhD in Ohio State, and he was a hockey guy, and he finally recognized, he said, you're not the guy that played for Montreal just 2 days ago in the Stanley Cup. And sure enough, I was, and we're still great friends, he and I. And so anyway, there's a lot of that. I felt really good about that one day in my life. I thought, now I'm in charge. When there were 6 teams in the NHL, as you guys know, the careers were short. There was no money. I mean, there was no $1 million contracts. I mean, you were making, I think the minimum was $7,000, and that's what I made my first contract. And the players all had summer jobs because they couldn't afford to pay the rent the rest of the year if they didn't. So it was a little different situation than it is now.
What was the most you ever made?
Oh, I think I was up in the 130,000, something like that. And even by then, I would only take 30,000 and to live on. And we had 4 kids then, and I wanted all the rest deferred at a competitive interest rate. So I'd have deferred income coming in when I finished school or finished my career to help pay for my kids' schools and get on with our life.
We just had ECAC Commissioner Steve Hagwell on, and he said, he's been in for more than 2 decades in the game, and he said, the NCAA today is not the NCAA I knew. You've been around the college game as a coach, as a player, obviously, and now as an administrator. Is the NCAA look a lot different to you?
Well, it's changing on the fly. Steve knows better than anyone. Being an administrator and respecting the rules that and the boundaries that they've laid out for their athletes and coaches, and whether it's recruiting or whatever it is, it seemed like they told you exactly what to do and what you couldn't do, and now it's like it's wide open. I'm really concerned about some of the sports, and we might lose some sports and some teams in some schools that can't afford to compete at the next level with all these rules or lack of rules. It's like going back to the Wild West. So I'm concerned about it too, and I hope some people take a leadership role and do what's best for the athletes, and think about all the non-revenue sports that are a big part of every school, and the terrific people that come out of those sports and end up in the business world or end up in the Olympics and so on. But you'd hate to see that all go by the wayside because the schools can't afford to pay their athletes or whatever it comes down to.
Transfer portal, a major concern. I'm sure when you were a coach, you never thought about guys leaving. If they did, you knew that there was a penalty for them. Is that a concern as a former coach? Yeah,
it would be a concern. I wouldn't encourage a kid. I can see there might be some troubled situations where a player didn't fit in at a school and maybe never got a fair chance, or there's always situations where maybe they could use something like that. But as far as good players on a team, putting their name in the portal to find out who wants them and where they might get a better deal, maybe get more money, not just scholarship money, but NIL money. I don't think that's good for the sport. I wouldn't take any. If I were coaching now, I wouldn't take any to say, look, you made your bed when you went to that school, and stay there and make it work. And just like I'm going to keep my word to you, if you come to Michigan and you're on a scholarship, and you're going to keep that scholarship, even if I made a mistake by bringing you here. I'm not going to cut you or cut your scholarship. And we've got to keep the integrity. I mean, what are you going to do with all your recruits that you've promised to come to your school when these transfer guys want to come in and they might be better players because they're proven and might be a little older, but what happens to the development of all your young players?
We saw one of your former players, Brandon Naurato, very late in the summer end up stepping into the role of head coach at Michigan, and that team faced some adversity with Stephen Holtz and his illness. Watching Brandon, remembering him as a player, what were some of your thoughts as you watched him kind of have to step into that leadership role and try to take a team back to the same place?
Yeah, that was a real, not an exciting time, but a real concerning time to have a kid put in that, and I say a kid now, he's not a kid anymore, but literally hadn't had any real coaching experience. But when you look at the experience he did have, he played 4 years at Michigan. He played a couple of years in the minors. He's been around some good coaches in Detroit when he was a skill development coach for Detroit. He's ran hockey clinics for kids for skill development of all ages, all the way from minor midgets up to the NHL. And so he's dealt with the players, and he knows how to run a practice and so on, how to have players organized. I think he's done a great job fitting in, considering. And I told him early, Brandon, well, I'm just going to be a resource for you, but just know that you don't know what you don't know. Like, I didn't know either when I stepped behind the bench. Well, all this stuff that was going to happen that, I never noticed before when I was a player. And you think you know everything when you're a player. But anyway, good for Brandon. And he kept that team together. He got them playing their best at the end of the year. And they had some terrific games. And, of course, the other night wasn't one of them. But that happens. And it'll be a learning experience for him going forward and so on. So I'm proud of him. And I think it was a good call by Michigan to give him some stability in a contract before the season was over and move forward. So, and now he knows, as far as recruiting and building the program, those players just didn't show up, the players he got to coach. Now, he did work for 1 year for Michigan as an assistant coach, but he'll get a taste of the recruiting trail and all the ups and downs with that and so on. So, good for him. He's in a good place, and he had a good season, and they can move forward with a lot of positive energy.
So you said you don't know what you don't know when you were a player. What was it like playing for Scotty Bowman?
Well, there was no question who was in charge. And Scotty Bowman was a demanding coach. He was a smart coach. He knew the game. He knew all the players. Like, he knew the strengths and weaknesses of every player on every team. He knew how to use his own players to their best of their ability. And there's no question that he was the best coach I played for. And then I ended up coaching with him for a couple of years in Buffalo. And it was, again, more of the same. That was the couple of years where Buffalo had drafted Andrechuk and Housley and Tom Barrasso and so on and so forth. Phil Housley did really good players. And so Scotty was great with the young players. And some coaches are good with older players, but they can't help develop, or they don't have the patience with the younger players. But Scotty was good. And then how many decades did he coach? So I think I learned a lot from Scotty Bowman. But you have to be yourself, as a player and as a coach. You can't pretend to be somebody you're not. And you just take the information that's out there and you decide what you're going to do, and then you do it. You go about doing it. But you have to be consistent, and you have to be yourself. I still talk to Scotty occasionally, so he lives here in Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if
I believe he's dropping the ceremonial puck tonight before the game, so you'll probably run into him again. Brett, I want to ask you, we asked John Lucia this because he's coached in championship games before. What do you remember about those days? And I'm not talking about the games themselves. I'm talking about the Fridays and Saturdays of getting through the semifinals. Now you've got to figure out what you have to do on Friday, get through Saturday. How do you keep your team even-keeled, all that stuff. What do you remember about those?
Yeah, I remember, I was lucky enough to play a little bit in situations, whether it was in the NHL and pro hockey and then in college hockey. And I just felt you had to keep your team focused. Like, you didn't have time to enjoy a Friday night victory, or you would fall flat Saturday. These kids are young and they're impressionable, and if the coach is out partying or celebrating or acting like the season's over and everything's fine, then they're going to relax too. And I tried not to let our team relax, and yet you want them to be focused and not over tight. Like when our teams at Michigan didn't do well in the NCAAs, it was because they were happy to be there. And when they did do well, they were on more of a business trip. And this is a mission. And we expect to win, and we're going to do what it takes to win, and we're going to do it together. And that was a lot more fun for all of us, and the players included.
I'll go to the other fun side. What was it like after winning in 96 and after winning in 98? Do you remember those nights well?
Well, I do. In 96, we were in Cincinnati. And the games were a long story, but in fact, Don Lucia was coaching Colorado.
Right.
We played in that championship game, and they were a good team, and we had a good team. And the game could have went either way, and obviously it went into overtime, and we finally won it. Brendan Morrison scored the overtime goal. And the team was excited, and we were finally, it was like it took a monkey off our backs that finally Michigan could win when we had good teams and didn't win. And then an hour later, we're on the bus, and we're going back to Ann Arbor, and the players wanted to watch a movie, and they put on the gunfight at the OK Corral, if you remember. And they were watching this movie, and I was sitting up front paying attention more to what just happened and why it happened, and on all the great things and all the effort that our coaching staff and the support that we had from our fans and the leadership on our team, and on and on and on. And I was really enjoying it. And then I'd look back, and the players, they're just happy to watch the movie.
So I had a chance to, Matt Herr worked for me as a volunteer assistant, know him in Pittsburgh when he was there. What people don't understand is you went to 4 straight Frozen Fours with Matt Herr's class.
Yep.
Every class went to the Frozen Four. I don't know if you see that nowadays.
Well, and they don't stay for 4 years if they're that good.
Yeah.
Think about it. That class had Billy McCall, who was an All-American.
Yeah.
A terrific player.
Turco, right?
And Turco, the goalie, who was one of the reasons we went, and it just made our team better. And then we had Chris Fox, a defenseman, and it was a small senior class. Chris Fox is a neurosurgeon here in the Mayo Clinic and just down the road at Jacksonville, Florida. And so it was... But those guys had been on the 96 team and on the 97 team that should have won. It was the best team we ever had at Michigan. And if you look at the numbers, it was incredible. And that just one of those special teams. And BU knocked us off in Milwaukee. And I still remember that. Obviously, you remember the tough losses as well. But Matt Herr had a meeting with the team, and he said, you guys that have rings from 96, take them off right now, and we're going to earn our own ring this year. And we had 10 freshmen on that 98 team. And it was the leadership of Matt Herr and Turco and McCall that just drove that team right as far as they could go. And then we got lucky. We won the game against Jerry York's. And they were a better team. BC was a better team than Michigan. But the best team doesn't always win in a one-game showdown. And we had Turco.
So last question. We've been asking to everybody, but I will throw something else on top of that. I brought Matt out. It was like a month into the season, and he said, hey, I'd really like to help you. I introduced him to the team. I said, he played 400 games in the NHL. He played 4 Frozen Fours. He had 200 points in college hockey. He pitched for Michigan's baseball team, and he was drafted by the Atlanta Braves. And they were like, oh, my God. And then skated away, and really their biggest question was, did he really get drafted by the Atlanta Braves? It wasn't anything other than,
right.
Did he really get drafted by the Braves? So, last question, prediction for tonight. With your Big Ted hat on, Steve,
I'm picking Minnesota, but they have to play well. Quinnipiac, as we saw on Thursday, they're a hard team to play against, and they've had a terrific season, only lost 4 games all year, the best goals against in the country, and so on. And Michigan knew that. I hope they respected it, and I hope Minnesota does, because they're going to be a hard team to beat.
Do you have a score?
I would say 3-2 in overtime.
Ooh, I like that one.
So
You won your 2 in overtime, so that makes sense. I know
and
that.
they were both 3-2.
And they were both 3-2, so that makes sense. Listen, Brett Berenson, we love talking with you every year at the Frozen Four. It's such a pleasure. Your stories are amazing. But thank you for sharing some time with us. Enjoy the night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend in Tampa.
Well, we will. We didn't come down here to walk around in shorts and flip-flops, but we come down here for hockey, and the crowds have been great. The environment's been great, and it's great to see college hockey fans coming from all the college hockey community, not just the 4 schools. So, I mean, we've got neighbors in Ann Arbor that they come to every Frozen Four, whether Michigan's in it or not. So, and here they are. So, it's good to see. Well, thanks, guys, for having me. It's good talking college hockey, and let's go Gophers.
And we'll be back with more of USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa in a moment.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Joe Pavelski.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
Johnny Gaudreau. And Torrey Krug were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
Welcome back to USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley, and this is always a favorite topic of ours, Jim.
It is. I mean, final guest of the weekend.
Save the best for last.
Saved the best for last. Officiating is always one of our favorite topics to talk about, and folks at the NCAA and have been really transparent over the years. And one of the best guys is Steve Piotrowski. He's the Big Ten supervisor of officials, but he was the longtime secretary of the NCAA Rules Committee, still very involved on the NCAA level. Pi, it is wonderful to have you here. Tampa, another great time in Tampa. We've third time I've seen you here, and I think third time you've probably been on the show here in Tampa.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's great. It's a great venue. I mean, this should be a venue that should be considered in a regular rotation. It's a destination for people, and can't beat the weather for sure.
No, that's true. We'll get into rules, but I want to go back. We've asked, both Red Berenson and Don Lucia, who coach teams in the Frozen Fours, what it was like, once you knew you were going to be in the national championship game Friday, Saturday, what goes through your head. You officiated national title games. As a referee, what is that like? What is Friday and Saturday like for a referee?
Well, first of all, it's an honor, and it's the excitement is there. A lot of it has to do because of neutrality of officials. That you think, well, if our teams are like, my officials can't work. They did a good job in the regional in Manchester, and they can't move forward because of neutrality. So when you get the assignment, you're excited. You're nervous. You want to do a good job. All the emotions are flowing. The preparation is there. You prepare just like you do during the regular season. You kind of keep a low profile. Make sure that you eat and rest well, and you enjoy it. But you understand that you're here to get a job done and prepare accordingly.
So, another question we've asked Don and other coaches or commissioners, coaches. What have you seen the changes? Obviously, you reffed when I played.
Yep.
I've been on the committee with you. I've been on the rules committee with you. I've coached with against your officials. All that. We've had a lot of conversations about this. What have you seen the changes from when you ref to now, as far as just the officials in general and the game?
Well, first of all, the scrutiny of the game is way different back when you played to where it is now. I mean, the use of video has continued to be prevalent at all levels.
Good and bad, though.
Yeah, good and bad for sure. But from an official that's officiating today, it's so very difficult because every call or non-call that's present, it's being scrutinized, and the guys get beat up a lot, and they understand that that's part of the role. But the commitment that the officials have today, both physically, from an educational standpoint, the ingestion of video, all the kinds of things that make them a better official, there's commitment. And there's no coincidence that the guys that continue to get the nod in advancing in the regional tournaments and they're selected out of their conferences are the guys that are committed to that. That's not to say the other guys aren't, but as they develop and as they observe those guys that are having success in their conferences, it motivates them. So it's competitive. It's competitive as it is with a hockey team. You're on the fourth line, you want to get to the first line. The same thing with officials. They may not work the conference playoffs their first or second year, but they want to get there.
I think we talk about it a lot with players in that the game has changed over the last 30, 40 years in terms of strength and conditioning and obviously video, the ability to watch video. But it's the same thing for officials. I mean, these officials are in unbelievable shape, unbelievable physical condition. They also have a lot more access, as you just kind of referenced, to video to kind of watch and learn off the ice. It's a different game for an official now.
No,
and it's an addition. It's a different process to be a referee.
No question. Yeah, no question. And it starts, and this is where I recruit probably 90+% of my officials are from the USNDP program and working with Scotty Zelkin very closely. So those officials are working in the USHL and the North American League, and they're getting exposure to high-level players in the junior league, and they're trained mechanically. So when they come into college hockey, the transition, it can be somewhat much more expeditious than it would be to take a high school official, and that's difficult for them.
We mentioned this to Dave Fischer from USA Hockey when we had him on earlier, and I know that they've had an ad campaign going about how you treat officials and all of that sort of stuff. And Gene Bind is a good friend, and if you follow his Facebook, he's usually posting about negative stories about not just hockey, but all sports. It's difficult being an official these days, and there's a level of scrutiny that has gotten ridiculous all the way down to probably 8-year-olds or maybe even younger than that. You've seen it. You grew up in it. I mean, is there a problem with how maybe parents sometimes attack or treat officials at different levels of youth hockey?
Well, there's no doubt that there's a problem. And, it starts with the parents, it starts with the coaches, and understanding, their place, that it's youth sports. And with that, as you're training a player, you're training an official. Is that young kid that's working a mic game going to make a mistake? He probably is. But to go and attack them or threaten them or chase them out off the ice into the locker room, all it's doing is chasing away the kids at the grassroots level that you would hope that would develop and have interest in wanting to officiate. So it's going to make the pool of officials at high levels that much more difficult if we don't address this.
Yeah, Fish said this is he said highest or second highest level ever for a number of officials. But do you see it? Do you see kind of a attrition that goes on, that you lose some officials throughout the process and it's harder to get good college officials?
At the youth level, I talk to a lot of the coordinators of officials or who work with the youths in our state, and there's no doubt that their numbers fall in trying to get games filled, which again, for us right now, we still have an opportunity, and we're still fortunate enough to have some kids to select from. But I don't know how long that pool is going to last, where it's going to get smaller and smaller.
We talked about it getting in a little bit into rules, and as you wrapped up your tenure as the secretary of the Rules Committee, the last part of that saw a few changes, whether it's video, face-offs, things like that. Watching the guys who you supervise in the Big Ten and seeing how some of these have been implemented, what's your assessment on how different things, the face-off warning? I bumped into a couple of your colleagues, Jeff Fulton and Pete Fiola, in an airport earlier this year, and talked to them a little bit about that. Things like the face-off, coaches' challenges and all. How are those things working out?
There are some that are good, and I'll speak to those in a second, and there's some that may have unintended consequences that I'm not sure good. One of the ones that in particular I'm not sure is real popular, it came out of the gate fairly strongly supported, was the double IHF face-off, where you were giving the center just a warning and not throwing them out. And what that's done for the centers, they've become educated. And they say, well, it doesn't matter if I'm going to get a warning, I'm still going to be in here, so I might as well take a chance to cheat on every face-off, and maybe that referee will drop while I'm cheating, opposed to making it a consequence. If you're a good center and you're going to get thrown out, and now a guy's going to come, he's not very good at the draw, there's a consequence to that. So that rule's among officials, it's not supported. I don't think it has a place, quite honestly, but we'll see where that goes. Coach's challenge I love. I think the more things that we can put into that area of having things challenged, the better. I think that's what frustrates coaches too, the discretionary things. As an example, why are you looking at this potential major penalty on my team and you're not looking at it at the other team, and not realizing that discretionary option is available. So making things challengeable, and the use of video angles, I think is certainly something that should be considered going forward.
Did you find that by adding multi-layers of challenges this year, because I didn't coach this year obviously, but from the outside looking in, the first time you challenged a penalty or a loss of timeout like it's always been, then adding a penalty, did it increase more challenges? Because I have no problem throwing a challenge out when it's just a loss of timeout.
Yeah, it definitely increased the challenges. As an example,
because it said that originally in the rule when they wrote it, and you're not on the, said it will decrease challenges, which I think it would have increased. So
yeah, it didn't at all. As an example, on our conference, our challenges went up year over year about 200%, and success rate on average was around 33%. So and where you're seeing what's happening in the challenges, because it's a timeout, and so be it, I lose a timeout, is that they're using it in some cases as a stall tactic. They score a goal, they kill momentum. I know that wasn't offside. It's clearly obvious, but it's going to give me a longer delay by the time the video's turned around and the decision is made, then I take a 1-minute timeout. So, those are the things that that we have to really experience and get through. That's where making it a little bit more punitive, if you want to challenge, you certainly have every right to, but it's going to result in a minor penalty.
But I guess when you gave that number 200% increase, the fact that the referees themselves are not going in and just looking at a ton of things that maybe were slowing down the game, I noticed, at least in Hockey East, that decreased significantly. So I guess you were going to get challenges anyways, whether it was tactical or whether it was actually, factual, that coaches thought there were going to be, changes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what I saw is as the year went on, the season went on, coaches got a little bit better in terms of the video being turned around and the digestion by their video ops people and bringing it down to the bench and telling them what to challenge. So they got a little bit better. Where they got stalled was at the beginning of the season, where they were saying, "Oh, wow, that looked pretty bad," and let's challenge it, and not realizing. And then when we slow it down and have a chance for the referees to look at it, clearly didn't support conclusive video evidence.
How about the change to allow a major and not have the game misconduct attached to it? Has that allowed maybe a little better situation for officials where it's either going to be a 2 or throwing a kid out, and maybe they find this is the right call, and maybe we're getting a little bit better calls in that area?
Yeah, I think that's helped. I mean, there have been, with an official's hands being tied in the old rule where there was a major plus a game misconduct, there were some probably not very strong calls, but the official's hands were tied, versus now in the guidance that the Rules Committee has provided on what should be a standalone major. It's kept kids in the game. It's not going to eradicate or remove the foul. It's a contact sport. There's always going to be potential for head contact and potential for contact from behind into the boards. But it's kept kids in that probably should have stayed. And where the consistency has gone from the start of the year being a new rule to where it finished was a lot better at all levels.
What's your favorite game you ever reffed?
Favorite game? Oh, boy. Yeah, there's
I've been asking that question. I got a little staple of questions.
Yeah,
today.
There's a lot. I mean, the Cold War was a great experience. It was the first, I guess you could say it was the first outdoor game.
State,
Michigan State.
Over 100,000.
Yeah,
No, that was at Michigan State, right?
That was at
70,
Michigan. Yeah, it was 75, something like that.
The first outdoor game.
First outdoor. It was really a cool experience. Some of the national championship games I worked were cool experiences. I remember when I was at Western, we had a big fight with Michigan State. I don't know if you were on that team, but there was a player. One of the players jumped in the bench, and I had to stand in front of Mason and get him out of there because 2 players were going at it. And so there's a lot of fond memories of the CCHA, a lot of fond memories of NCAA games and working, and a lot of great people along the way, coaches, players, officials. It's that fraternity. Hockey people, I can't speak highly enough of them. They're all cut from the same cloth, like you guys. I mean, we see each other so often at these events, and these are friendships that you have for a lifetime. So it's pretty cool.
And that's the funny thing. So, college hockey back when you ref, no helmets, 8 teams, 3 leagues, the game was. And it was nasty. It was physical.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could play in this game now. I mean, I'd be holding penalties galore. But yet you just shook your head and go, play on.
Yeah.
You didn't like calling penalties.
Yeah. Well, the standard of play was way different then, and it was accepted. And
water skiing.
Yeah.
And you just put your stick in somebody's arm and you just
Bill Wilkinson called me Velcro man because I would latch on to you and I wouldn't let go.
Yeah. It was accepted back then, and the changes that have happened for the game are for the better. Allow the skilled players to play skilled, and the speed. I mean, you look at the game the other night, how fast it was in both games. So it's evolved for certain, but going back to those memories of those games that were, call it the old time hockey or whatever you want to call it, but it's different now for sure.
I want to go back to video review a little, and
Yep.
you're in Big Ten. It's a league with a lot of resources. I'm sure that the camera positions in the schools are great. The technology they can use to get the video sent down to the referee is probably great. But we have 6 leagues, unstandardized video review for the most part. I mean, I guess maybe you have to have a camera over the goal might be the only standard that's really in there. Does there need to be more standardization? I understand that there's budget issues that go along with that, but it does feel like, depending on the league, depending on the building you're in, you might get a different result of video review because of the technology.
There's no doubt that there's differences, and whatever it is, if it's economics, budgetary, physical plant, whatever the case be, but it's a competitive disadvantage. And if you're coming from a conference like our conference, which is fortunate enough to have some of those video resources, and you play on the road, and you don't know how many camera angles or what you're going to get to, the need for challenges becomes a challenge in itself, because there may not be the angles. Like some of the schools, you've got video areas where the officials look at video that are off the rink, if you will. You got to go into another room.
Yep.
And that's so difficult. That adds delays. That actually adds challenges to on-ice supervision and the ability to turn around the review in an expeditious manner. Like I think we had 166 conference reviews, conference play, not including playoffs. Our turnaround time for the review is 1 minute and 12 seconds.
Unreal.
So, that in itself can show that it can be turned around, but logistics of where it's located on the ice, the ability of the tech to turn around the video, et cetera, play a big reason why that can be done. But in addition, one of the things that I do want to mention before I forget is game time. I love our league. Our coaches love our league as far as the game time. Our average game time was 2 hours and 10 minutes. And we had over 20 games that were under 2 hours. Our fastest game was an hour and 40 minutes.
That's a dream.
Yeah.
That is a dream as a Hockey East guy that we're in the 2:35 range. So.
Yeah. So, what's added to that is 12-minute intermissions. What's added to that is one minute timeout per period.
And only one.
Per period rather than 3 timeouts. So it's been good. The players love it. The coaches love it. The fans, media love it.
One question on that, and it's because I saw a game at a Big Ten school in person where it seemed like the ice was still a little bit too wet after those 12 minutes. So there's some work that has to be done with institutions to make sure they don't take too much time on promotions and stuff like that so that the crew can get out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are some outliers where little Johnny missed a couple shots on the breakaways, but the ZAM drivers, the game management people, those ice maintenance people, they really take great pride, and they do a good job to turn it around so the ice is settled in, and it's almost like a NASCAR pit crew. You watch them how they react, how they do their shovel pass, how they clean the ice to get it prepared so it's settled in. So by the time we're at 0. Ice is dry. We're not wasting another minute or two to squeegee.
Final question.
Maybe not final. I have
you have a backup question? Well, you go first. Mine's the final question. You know what? You've been waiting all year for this, so we won't.
Not it's not a rule change year.
Correct.
The book will not change. But I know that they can tweak things. Do you hear of anything, or will there be discussions on anything that might get tweaked this year?
Well, you hear a lot of things.
What are the major discussions?
Unintended consequence. One of the things that I see are very challenging to manage through video review are the too many men leading to a goal. It's a gained advantage. That rule's evolved over time. When it first came in, things that were too many men 100 feet behind the play that had nothing to do. Because it was too many men, goals were taken off the board. So the Rules Committee tweaked that, and I think it's just too many inconsistencies in terms of determining what a gained advantage is and what is not. And so those are the unintended consequences. So I think that'll be looked at, and other things. I'm not sure they can do much more because those are rule change things. So, but face-offs are being looked at. The video review criteria, whether things are going to be challenged or are still going to allow the opportunity for discretion, those kinds of things. I know in some conferences there's not a lot of support for. In college hockey, you have a delayed penalty. You score a goal, the penalty's going to be served.
I love that rule, though.
Yeah, it's proven. It's turned around. It's a 2-goal swing in some situations.
Often.
Yep. So
double jeopardy, they call it. I mean, but that can't be really changed this year, right?
No.
Maybe I like it because I was part of that committee that made that rule.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, though.
It does.
I mean, the penalty happened. You pulled your goalie. You took that extra chance with your empty net. You've shot pucks in the net. Even you've seen it, so why should you not have to have that penalty?
Right. Yeah. No. There's some support continues for it, but there's in some cases there's a reason that
the DQ one people don't like either. Or they backed off on that one?
Yeah, no, they backed off on that one. There was some discussion about the 3-game misconduct, now that there's majors.
Yes.
But I don't know. You got a guy that's taken 3 or 4 in a season. Jesus. So, and that's where it goes back. We've had these discussions about penalties and officials doing their part and making sure that the calls are being made and enforcing the rules. But in order for eradication and management of it, it has to be officials doing their job, coaches, players doing their job, administrators supporting. If all those elements don't take place, then it becomes very difficult.
Okay, now the final question.
Go ahead.
I'm going to change it a tad because I know that you were going to put your Big Ten hat on and you predict Minnesota to win because you have to. Who's going to have more penalties in this game?
Oh. Who's going to have
more penalties?
Geez, I've watched Quinnipiac play. They're a structured team. They're very disciplined. In Minnesota has been one of the least penalized teams in college hockey.
They're both in the top 3 for least penalized teams.
Right.
Quinnipiac number 1, Minnesota number 3.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a game where the officials are going to be able to stay out of the way and let the players play. So I think it's going to be a lot of north-south play, a lot of exciting hockey, lots of chances. But I don't think it's going to be a chippy game. Looking at both teams, and it's a game again. As I mentioned, I think the officials are going to be able to stay out of the way.
Could we see a game without a power play?
A no-hitter.
I'm not going to go all that far out on a limb, but I will say this: Minnesota, in our conference play this year, 2 back-to-back games against Michigan State. No hitters, both games, 0 penalties.
The other one would be a perfect game, though, if you went both sides. No.
Both sides, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, Steve Piotrowski, we always appreciate not just your time, but the transparency you give to officiating. I know our listeners love talking about this topic, so always a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you for popping over, and obviously enjoy tonight. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Absolutely. You guys, too. It's always great to see you, and thanks for having me on.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. It'll be our predictions for tonight on USCHO Frozen Four Live.
Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 90% rate. Jonathan Taves.
Backhand scores! Wow, what a goal!
Colton Parayko. And Patrick Sharp were stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey. Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow @collegehockey.
Champions of the college hockey world!
We're back with our final segment on USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa. And first of all, before we jump in, special thanks to Harpoon Harry's Crab House. It's been terrific to be here. We had our annual USCHO reception here. A lot of us have had some meals here. Shout out to Sam and the staff here. It's been terrific.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, it is. And so I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly, Derek Schooley, and this is the part that we've been leading up to, our predictions. We've even had predictions of our predictions. But, all season long on Weekend Review and on some of our other podcasts, we have talked about how this was going to be, that the Big Ten was the best conference this year. Quinnipiac has played very well and stuck with their system. So we have what have been really the top two teams for a whole lot of the season facing off tonight. And as the NCAA, you couldn't ask for anything better. And to have the Gophers here, you couldn't ask for anything better for attendance. But it now all comes down to tonight's game. Quinnipiac played nearly flawlessly on Thursday night to get here. And Minnesota showed how deep they are. It was a freshman who may not have been on everybody's mind who got the game winner. So that leads us up to today, Minnesota and Quinnipiac. And Jim, before we get to our predictions, the over-under on this game has stayed the same since Thursday, or into Friday, I guess. Friday is when it came. Thursday night, it was a little bit different line, and it kind of settled in where it is now. With
over-under hasn't moved.
Hasn't moved.
Yeah,
and it's a plus 150 for Quinnipiac, so they are the underdog with Minnesota at a minus 185. Over-under is 6.5, kind of leaning a little bit toward the over, but not by much.
That's interesting because yesterday it leaned toward the under, so that maybe the over has probably been bet a little bit harder. I am going to guess that the line moved early. Obviously, I think it opened at 20 points difference on both sides. That means the early money did go to Minnesota. We know that. We talked about that yesterday on the podcast. It doesn't seem, though, in the last 24 hours much has changed. So there might have been some early money on Minnesota. I think that it hasn't balanced, though. There's not been money back on Quinnipiac. So I still think that Minnesota feels like the heavier favorite. Might be. We don't get to. I don't have historical lines because we haven't had betting lines on national championship games. But this is probably one of the widest margins in terms of favorites, especially when you consider that it's the number 1 and number 2 seeds against each other.
Well, let's talk about predictions. Who wants to go first?
Are we going to go predictions? I really think that this, and I've said this, if Minnesota's defense can move the puck up the ice, like they have been, 7 deep, continue to do this, get the puck to their forwards, to Cooley, Nyes, all that. This should be Minnesota, and I said yesterday, I bet the house, even though people called us Eastern bias on the way and online and said we were going to pick Quinnipiac, blah, blah, blah. You want Jim to pick Quinnipiac, quite honestly, because he's wrong all the time. So the Western bias in me, because that's what then I would change, would say Minnesota 5-2.
And okay, and that sounds pretty good. I'm going to tell you mine in a moment, Jim.
I'll give the Minnesota fans what they want. I'm going to say Quinnipiac.
Wow.
3-2 in overtime because I have not been right in I think 4 Frozen Fours. Not a single game right in any of the last 3 years. So
you really want Minnesota to win?
I'm just trying to help the Minnesota fans out.
You really think Minnesota's going to win?
I really think they will, but I'm going to have to say Quinnipiac because if I don't, then I'm gonna jinx my own pick. I picked Minnesota before this tournament started. I really had a lot of confidence in them. I mean, I picked Big Ten when this tournament started. I think I had Minnesota or Michigan in the national title game, but I had Michigan winning, not Minnesota. So that's the one maybe difference. But I still think the Big Ten is probably superior. But just to make sure that my jinx stays in place, I'll pick Quinnipiac 3-2 in overtime.
If that happened, it will be because Perret stands on his head.
What about the neutral zone?
I think that Minnesota saw the fact that It didn't work for Michigan. I think it's been made known that it didn't work. I mean, Don Lucia hadn't even listened to any of our shows, threw that out right off the bat.
Right.
So they know what they have to do. I think they're more capable of doing it because they're not as run and gun.
Maybe.
So I think Peretz is really going to have to stand on his head for your prediction to come correct.
And the other thing, too, is I think that the one difference between Minnesota and Michigan is Michigan, they need their speed through the neutral zone. Minnesota creates speed within the offensive zone, and that's what we saw against BU the other night.
All right, on that point, I'm going to give you a nickname, which is why Minnesota is going to win this tonight. Killer. Steve Miller has been away from all this stuff.
Do you really think he is?
I really think he
come
is. He has been at a different hotel, staying in his own room by himself, digging through video. And what you brought up about Michigan, in my opinion, maybe it wasn't their style, but they were not prepared to deal with that Quinnipiac forecheck. I think that Minnesota saw the lesson. They're going to be prepared. They win this 4-2.
So I will find out, because we will do our postseason wrap-up after Naples. I will find out from Bob in Florida if Killer really did stay at a different hotel. I bet you he stayed at the same hotel away from his family.
But I think he had his own room and did not leave. It was what Bob said yesterday. So
we'll see. But I understand. Steve Miller has won so much at Denver, Providence. I mean, that's one of the reasons Bob brought him.
U.S. hockey team, U.S. World Junior
and Bob
team.
won World Juniors with him. That's why Bob brought him from OSU here. Steve Miller's a very good assistant coach, and will help. But so, finish your prediction. What was it?
Minnesota 4-2. Maybe that fourth one's an empty netter.
Well, Rand pulls the goalie so early, it could be
7-2.
It could be 7-2. That's why the over/under is really crazy.
That could very well be.
The over/under likely gets decided by an empty net goal. There's a good chance. It's 6.5 right now.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's possible that you get to 4-2 and maybe 5-2. We saw it the other night. BU 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, and Quinnipiac 4-2, 5-2 almost went to 6-2 in the closing seconds. So
right.
So I guess we'll find out in our postseason wrap-up.
We will, and you can watch for that online at USCHO.com. We're down to the last few seconds of the broadcast. It has been a blast to do this here live here in Tampa. Enjoy the games tonight.
Well, it's also, I want to make sure we recognize Schools for what he's done for 2 years. Tough time of your life, I know, with no program to coach, and now you're going back to coaching. Whether you're here or not, we don't know. We're going to have negotiations all summer with your agent, I'm sure, but
family advisor.
But seriously, thank you for everything. You have been not just a great friend, a roommate here. You had to listen to me snore a couple of times.
Bad last night.
But we appreciate everything you've done for us.
Thank you. And we still have a postseason, so this isn't, even if we can't come to term or to
you got one show left.
We still have one show, but you know what? It's been fun, and you know what? I didn't know where things were going, and when I reached out to you to do this, and you guys have welcomed me, so thank you for having me and having you here. And you know what? I just take away from Ed's talking time. But he's been a great facilitator.
Well, and you know what? Even so, maybe we'll have you on our Spotlight podcast as a coaching guest too.
We'll see how it plays out.
All right.
I wouldn't write the obituary yet.
Well, for Derek Schooley, for Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Frozen Four live from Tampa.